We're here this morning with Jay Yates, a risk management specialist with the Texas AgriLife Extension Service. Now, as water levels continue to decline, how does the producer's risk change?
Well, in the years that I've been out here doing our Farm Assist program, where we work with individual producers and assess their risk, is I look at the producers who are 100% dry land versus those that are virtually all irrigated. They have a lot wider production risk. They have much higher highs on their profit and lower lows, and so overall it really increases the risk of production, the risk of them being profitable.
Okay, now talk about Farm Assist.
Well, the Farm Assistance Program that we have through the Texas AgriLife Extension Service works individually with producers to take their income and expense levels that they have in their farm, and to also look at that over time with the yield variation they have on their farm. And then we key into that also data that we have in our program for projections and also on historical yields and prices. And we put all that together, and it comes out with a risk assessment that shows their average profitability over the next 10 years and how that affects their balance sheet and other things. And then also, not only does it do the average, but we give them a range of values that covers and says, you've got a 50% probability that you're going to fall in this area, and a lot of times the bottom end of that's below zero, and we don't like to see that because that means you got about a 50-50 shot in a year that you're going to lose money. And so we look at that, and as we look at dryland producers versus irrigated producers, they tend to have a lot more of those sub-zero profit years, but then on the good years, their percent profit tends to be a lot higher.
Now, as irrigation is ever-changing and evolving, what are some different marketing strategies for producers?
Well, one of the things that we get into with dryland production, that higher variability of their production, is it's hard to market the crop early because you don't know if you have a crop. We're seeing that this year where companies are not really offering acreage contracts for cotton, and so you have to go out and forward contract pounds if you want to take advantage of these prices of $1 and better. Well, with dryland production, it's hard to know what pounds you have this early, because if it stays dry like it's been, you may not have any pounds. And we're seeing this. There were some stories coming out of Australia, the farmers who got flooded out, and they had pound contracts, and they had to go in and fill their what looked like really good contracts at $1 a pound. They had to go out and buy cotton at $1.45 a pound to fill those contracts. So that makes it a lot riskier. With irrigated production, our biggest risk is normally going to be from hail. And so we have a little bit smaller risk. It's easier. We usually have a minimum amount. Most irrigated producers can make at least a minimum amount of cotton every year because they don't have all their fields in one place. And so they can minimize risk by geographic diversity. Whereas a dryland producer, usually if it doesn't rain everywhere. And so they can lose their whole production a whole lot easier.
Why are we seeing these acreage contracts versus pounds contracts, or aren't seeing the acreage contracts?
Well, it's because there's a lot more risk in the market. With the volatility in prices, the companies who offer contracts they're having to pay for that volatility and pay that risk premium, and it's really cutting down their profit margin, and they really can't afford to be out there and have more risk by taking on also the risk of production in their contracting. So we'll see some acreage contracts available on dry land once we actually know we've got a crop in the ground and it's come up, probably June, July. So they might be able to forward contract, not before you plant, but after planting. Of course, right now it's if you are a dryland producer, and what's really popular with dryland producers is to be in like the PCCA cooperative pool, because you actually can sign acres into that pool. And it's really about the only place that a producer can get his crop marketed on an acreage basis at this time of year.
Now, how is the economy on the High Plains linked to agriculture production, specifically speaking to irrigation?
Yeah, when it comes to irrigation, it makes a big impact. We talk a lot about how much water gets used, but not a lot of times do we talk about how much value we're getting out of that. There's a lot of the infrastructure we have on the high plains that we wouldn't have if it wasn't for infrastructure. I mean, for the irrigation that's going on, because the yields are too unreliable and on purely dry land, and there's just not as much profit on purely dry land. We did a study last year coming out of data that we got out of the Texas Alliance for Water Conservation Project. We used those numbers and extended that out to the entire High Plains, or at least the South Plains. And we saw that if all the irrigation was lost and we went to all dry land, that we'd see a net loss of about 7,300 jobs. In addition to that, a net loss of $1.6 billion of output and about $600 million of value added that comes down the chain on top of that. So, it's a big impact on our area for the Lubbock economy and the surrounding economy. 1.6 billion is a pretty big impact, and that's not doing completely away with the acres. That's just converting all the irrigated acres to dry land. Wow.
Well, how can a producer get involved with Farm Assist?
Well, they can just give me a call would be the best thing. Just call out at the center. It's 806-746-6101 and just ask for me.